We might be looking at agriculture the wrong way because today's agricultural systems are not about producing food but about maximizing profit. Hi, this is Gautam. For today's episode, we are looking at this book, Who Really Feeds the World by author Vandana Shiva. If you're interested in books on agriculture and environment, do look at the description for the playlist. Author Vandana Shiva convincingly argues about several problems associated with the agricultural production, especially of food companies, which involve large scale monoculture systems. She talks about the nexus among food, seed, and fertilizer producers and convincingly argues that the concept that the industrial monocultures of food companies are efficient is not exactly true because they involve large scale application of nitrogenous fertilizers. Now, where is the connection? How does the efficiency get lost if you apply nitrogenous fertilizers? Well, the idea is that for production of these fertilizers, you will need to go for oil refining. And oil refining is an energy intensive process. So the author argues that the concept of efficiency when it comes to industrial monoculture, especially of food companies, is not true. Of course, one could definitely have counter arguments for the above points, but this is just the view of the author. Proceeding further, she attacks a fundamental aspect of how agriculture is done, calling out a knowledge paradigm. She states that, the Western philosophy talks about an efficient Newtonian method, and every other agricultural knowledge which comes from not just the Eastern Hemisphere, but from all the continents apart from Western Europe and the anglicized portion of the Americas, which says that every other non-Western system is simply dismissed as unscientific. Vandana Shiva argues that this is a problem in knowledge paradigm, that there will be hidden details and there will be hidden very good prospects of agricultural methods in systems all over the world because it is being used for several hundreds and at times more than 1,000 years. She bases this argument on this fact, which is repeated quite often in the book, that 70% of food production today is done by small farmers. So, if these farmers are able to feed or predominantly able to feed the world, which means their methods should have some sort of acceptance, their methods should have some sort of scientific background without which this is not possible. And she also argues that this is much more safer to environment and ecology rather than the industrial monoculture systems of food companies. She also criticizes the use of this terminology of high yielding varieties, which, as I'm pretty sure several readers are familiar with, not just part of the Green Revolution across the world, but also in India. She calls them to be high responsive varieties because they are not high yielding, but they are more responsible for proper application of irrigation systems, fertilizers, pesticides, and etc. Once the concept of quantifying agriculture in terms of GDP started quite immensely, especially in the post 1920s and 1930s, we have seen a fact that more focus on this one economic parameter as GDP has really not accounted for the soil pollution or the loss of soil resources associated with these practices, nor about the loss of the so-called pests, which are actually insects. Because for the pesticides, it is really not possible to differentiate between which organisms are beneficial or harmful to an agricultural system. So the author argues that the word pest itself is subjective because several insects are essential part of the ecosystem even if they affect food production to an extent. The dimensions expand to the shortcomings of genetically modified organisms, the questions of transport, and also about how the proliferation of free trade agreements among different countries and the establishment of a World Trade Organization has made sure that subsidized agriculture in the developed nations is actually harming the traditional agricultural practices and production system of developing countries. And there is also the eco-feminist perspective that when it comes to changes in agricultural systems or problems in agricultural systems, women are affected much more. So this eco-feminist perspective is also given importance by the author. The strength of the book is its size and its length and the fact that it is straight to the point. But the problem is also the same. It would have been much helpful if this work was voluminous, having several anecdotes, several storylines, and if the language, apart from being being straightforward, could have been more catering to the general audience with more examples and stories. So at the same time, if you are very familiar with agroecology and agriculture, this might not be really helpful to you because it is written from a beginner's perspective. But apart from these two shortcomings, to get a proper understanding of the alternate view for the monocultural industrial food systems, you can definitely go for this book. That's it for today's review. Meet you with the next book, possibly on Nagaland. Bye for now.